Two other voices have been vocal in this debate. Businessman Dick Smith says Australia must curb its population growth, and if we don't, it will have grave reservations or consequences down the track. One of those is that we could possibly run out of food. Gympie MP David Gibson sees it very differently, and they've agreed to debate this topic this morning. Dick Smith and David Gibson, good morning.
Good morning, Madonna.
Is there an ideal number for the population of Australia, Dick Smith?
Well, that's the problem. Nobody knows. Look, in aviation, we do a proper safety case. When we're designing a new airline, might last for 20 or 30 years, we make sure that it's going to be safe for that period of time. When I've gone around and asked our scientists, look, our Prime Minister says 36 million is great. Is there a safety case on this? They said, no, not only that, but we're sleepwalking away to a disaster, Dick. We believe there won't be enough food because of climate change.
David Gibson, do you think that sounds alarmist? Do you have a number in your mind of what Australia should grow to?
Look, I think it is alarmist. I do agree with Dick that we need to get some the research right. But clearly, Australia has the capacity to grow, and we should grow. We've got many opportunities, and within Queensland, we have towns now whose population is less than what it was back in 1950.
All right, can I stop you there? You say clearly we have the capacity to grow, but on this program each day, I am questioning politicians because we don't have the infrastructure, we don't have the roads. You live in an area of Queensland where there are constant complaints that the infrastructure is not there for the people moving up from New South Wales and Victoria.
And Madonna, you've hit the issue right on the head. It's not the concern about population growth. It's the failing of governments to provide the infrastructure to support that population growth. The frustration that people in southeast Queensland experience day to day is because governments haven't delivered on infrastructure, not because there are more people here. People enjoy their lifestyle. What they don't enjoy is the fact that the roads haven't been built, the hospitals aren't there, our schools are overcrowded.
All right, Dick Smith, is there an argument there that it's not so much the number of people, it's the infrastructure that our governments have failed on?
Well, that's absolutely correct, but that's not my argument. What I'm saying is that children who are being born now will probably live until the end of this century. That's 90 years away.
Yes.
At our present rate of growth, we will end up with 100 million in Australia at that time. Now, every scientist I've spoken to just says, well, there's just simply no way we could feed that many. The rest of the world's going up by 2 billion. There will be starvation everywhere. And what I find, Madonna, is, well, where are the facts? Why don't we have a scientist looking at it?
All right, David Gibson, on that point, I mean, Dick Smith is a very reputable business person. He's spoken to scientists who've said this. Why is it so easy for people to dismiss his claims about starvation as sensationalist?
Well, I think when we look at examples around the world, let's take, for example, Germany. Their population is actually declining. Countries just don't exponentially keep growing until they collapse. What happens is population and communities naturally manage where they're at. We've seen cities that have gone through various reiterations over globally, where they've grown, they've reduced in size, they've reinvented themselves. That's the resilience of human beings. We always find a way to continue to add to our lifestyle. And I believe when we start talking about Australia will just keep growing exponentially till we've got some ridiculous number, clearly that's not going to be the case.
Why not? Why do you say clearly that's not going to be the case?
When we look, well, evidence around the world shows, Germany's population is actually declining. Now, they have looked at, where they've got to, they've looked at their resources, and people don't think of Germany as a crowded country, but their population is declining. We look at other countries where, of course, it is growing. For Australia, we're not at a point where we can't grow anymore. We will grow, and we will get to a point where, as a community, we will be able to ensure that the infrastructure supports what we need, and as a community, we decentralise out of the crowded cities.
All right, Dick Smith, what is wrong with that argument just put by MP David Gibson?
Well, what's wrong with it is that every family makes a decision about how many kids they're going to have. A typical family during their reproductive life could have probably 15 or 20 children.
Goodness help me.
Yeah, that's right, but virtually none do. Australians make a decision saying, what's the optimum number that we can keep in a good lifestyle, that we can give good education to and give them a good life? Now, nationally, we have no equivalent, and worldwide we have no equivalent of any optimum number. The problem is that if we are going to have to stabilise our population one day, which is what David is suggesting, the problems that are going to exist then with an ageing population are going to be the same but worse than today.
So I know the science of this hasn't been done, but do you have a view on what would be the appropriate number of children people should have as part of an education campaign?
My suggestion at the moment is that I'd be very careful of bringing too many children into the world at the moment, knowing that in their lifespan of, say, 90 years, that nobody has done a proper study, a current study, of how much food we're going to have in the world, and the scientists are saying that we're sleepwalking our way into catastrophe.
So what do you think would be the appropriate number if you're starting a family now, if you were, or your children or your grandchildren were? What would you say to them?
Well, right at this moment, I think I would have replacement 2 kids until I found out whether children are going to have enough food at the end of this century, 90 years away, because scientists can easily do this study. They simply haven't done it because they're not game. Let me give you an example of what's happening. The Murdoch press is totally pushes for growth. It never stops. Now, if you worked for the Murdoch press, you would be very game to differ on what Rupert insists on. Constant growth, huge greed for profits. Rupert only has 10, 20 years to live. It's our grandchildren that's the problem. Everyone knows you can't keep growing in a finite world.
David Gibson, a response to that?
Look, I'm not going to get into conspiracy theorists as to how long, media barons have and what their agendas are. My family, we have 5 children. It's a blended family. My wife is a migrant, so not only do I believe in population growth, I practiced it, but we have made a decision that 5 children was enough for our family. Each family will make that decision based on their own circumstances.
But were you making that decision on the here and now, or what their families might be in 70 or 80 years' time?
We were making that decision on our capacity as parents to raise those children, provide them with love and attention, and to support their needs.
All right. Do you want Australia to grow at its current rate, or do you think there's an argument for increasing the population in terms of opening the borders up to skilled migrants or humanitarian grounds and encouraging people to have more children?
I believe we've got to grow our population, and currently our birth rate would not grow our population.
So how many children would you need to have to grow our population?
We would need 2.1. So you'd need to have more than 2 is stability. And obviously you don't have 0.1 of a child. So, we would need to have more than 2 children to grow. I believe skilled migration is essential because it brings talent into our country that we don't always possess. And humanitarian migration are allowing people to come in. We are not a mean-spirited country. Australians have had a great capacity over the years to support people from other parts of the world. And I believe we as a society should continue to do that.
All right.
Too many humans.
All right. Can I go to David Gibson? David, would you support the federal government commissioning such research?
Well, look, Madonna, absolutely, because I think what it will find is that there is scope for growth. I think what it also will do will be putting pressure on both state and federal governments to fund the infrastructure to support that growth so that our quality of life can be maintained.
All right. So
that, to me, is an essential part.
Can I give you both 30 seconds each to sum up where you see this argument and what you want people listening to take out from it? And I'll start with you, David Gibson. 30 seconds.
For me, population growth is not about why should we, it's about how can we and how can we maintain our lifestyle and ensure that we have the infrastructure that underpins that.
Oh, that was very short. Good on you. That was only 15 seconds. How about you, Dick Smith? You can take the whole 30 seconds.
I'll try and do a short one. Look, population growth will benefit wealthy people like me and Rupert Murdoch. Virtually everyone else is going to be downside. The people that are here, if you double the population, each person is basically worth half as much. There is no plan. There is no scientific study. We are sleepwalking our way into a catastrophe.
Dick Smith, thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you.
And David Gibson, thank you very much, sir, for your time too.
Thank you very much, Madonna.